Namaste, my friends. Welcome to Jack Colley's Black Book. This is episode 44, and we're going to wrap up our discussion today of a song that I wrote called Fred Wept, Donut in the Sink. And we're going to look at the epilogue. So there's 3 or 4 episodes before this that go over the different choruses, verses, bridges of this song. My music tends to not have a specific form per se, because a lot of my music, it's considered dark wave, so it's a little bit more punk and pop and new wave, and a lot of my music tells stories, and so this is the story of an event by my kitchen sink during a pretty rough part of my life. And so this is the epilogue. So the epilogue of the song cuts in, and there's kind of this break in the song, and it turns into kind of this, I don't know if you call it double time or halftime feel, kind of a gospel type feel. But the phrases here are the lyrics. Here are the lyrics. So Fred dries off the black feet with his favorite towel, channeling his Jesus, washing feet, washing feet. So here's the cover of the song if you're interested in listening to it. And here is the iconic scene from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, where he invites Officer Clemmens, a black police officer, on a warm summer day, and he's got the kiddie pool set up there, and invites Officer Clemmens to remove his shoes and socks and share this pool to cool off their feet together. And, Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, being a minister, a lot of his shows have this, not only have the symbolism built in, but I'm so impressed with this human being. What an incredible human being Mr. Rogers was. But I wanted to take some time to discuss the symbolism of washing feet. And what I want to do is I want to go through the major religions and talk about, just very briefly, what washing feet symbolizes. And then what I want to do is I want to take a look at how Christianity took this symbolism of washing feet and kind of turned it on its head, which is something that I find Christianity does a lot of. It's one of the things that I really love and appreciate about the Christian tradition, is that quite often it presents things in a very counterintuitive way that we just can't argue with, and sometimes we can't make sense of, and yet we apply it to our lives and we just know that it's right. One of those things, for example, what I'm thinking of is like the Beatitudes, where, the first shall be last and the last shall be first. The meek shall inherit the earth. Blessed are the peacemakers. All of these things that kind of turn things on their head, turn culture on its head. And we wonder, like, this is just an interesting twist as to a different take. I think this will make sense as we get into it. So I want to start with the oldest religion, which is the Hindu religion. And what I want you to consider is the Hindu caste system, which, if you have a chance, do some research on the Hindu caste system so that you know what you're talking about. I know enough about the Hindu religion, probably enough that I can speak very vaguely about it. And what I can tell you is that the caste system really has gotten a bad rap simply because a couple of publications and what people say about it. And if you really look at what the caste system is trying to explain in terms of how societies work, it's almost like we put the cart before the horse when we look at the caste system. To me, the Hindu caste system is like, okay, here's a model to explain the way things work in society, but there's nothing to say that once an individual is a part of this particular caste, that they automatically have to stay there. And I think if you do some cursory research, you'll realize that we're almost interpreting that backwards. It's like we're looking at this model of the caste system and saying, oh, therefore we must live Hinduism out this way. And I think rather it's, hey, here's a model to help us understand how societies typically function and how societies are typically structured. So anyway, but look at that. What's interesting to me is that the caste system is often modeled with like a statue, where you have the head, and then you have the shoulders, and the head is something like the Brahma, like the educated, insightful people. I don't have this exactly right, so please look it up. And then you have this second level, which I think is something like the warrior class. And then it keeps going down until you get to the bottom level, which is the feet. So this is kind of where we're going with this symbolism of the feet. And then below the feet are the untouchables. So there is a part of this caste system, or it's better to put it this way, there is a segment of society that is not even a part of society. They are completely removed, and they are considered untouchable. So in Hinduism, the feet are the lowest point, with the untouchables even below the feet. And so what you have is you have this symbolism where when you enter a Hindu temple, so I am planning on going to India in a couple of months here to get more experiences with this world. And I know that when I go to the Hindu temple, one of the expectations, I guess you would call it an expectation, or one thing that I want to do is I want to remove my shoes and socks. And there's a lot of symbolism between not wearing your shoes in a temple, having your feet grounded to the earth, having your feet connected to the earth. And I think that there's even some symbolism with respect to what is below your feet. The untouchables are below the feet. And it's just kind of, I want you to keep that image in mind, that below the feet are the untouchables. Now I want to go, so fast forward a little bit to Judaism. And in Judaism, the servant would wash the feet of guests. So if you went to dinner at somebody's house and there were servants there, the servant would wash your feet. And so this was in preparation for dinner. This was in preparation of welcoming you into somebody's home. Is the individual who was hosting this meal or this gathering would ask their servants to wash the guest's feet. And so, again, you have, somewhat like the caste system, you have this hierarchy. You have the host up here, and then here you have the host servants, and then you have the guest coming into the home. And when the guest comes into the home, it's the servant that washes the guest's feet. It's not the host, it's the servant that washes the feet. And so I think this has some, this gives me some insight into what Fred Rogers is doing here, is this other element of the servant washing the guest's feet. And then you have Muslims. And when I did some cursory research on Muslims, Muslims wash their feet before prayer. So it is protocol, if you will, to wash your feet before prayer. And the image that I got as I was reading up on this, the image I got was a Muslim washing their feet in preparation of communion with God. And so if we look at communion with God as prayer, or if we look at prayer as being kind of communion with God, this intimacy that is supposed to be private, I mean, that is the Christian teaching, is you go into your room to pray. So you go into your room to pray, you do this in private. There's a level of intimacy there in terms of this prayer, in terms of this communion with God. And the first step, or one of the first steps, is to wash your feet before prayer. So we have all of these elements of washing one's feet. Then what's really interesting to me is Jesus shows up on the scene. So more recently, Jesus shows up, and there's this image of Jesus washing the feet of other people. So here's Jesus. Let me see if I can explain this, because it's like, I don't know, it's an incredible image, an incredible symbolism. But here is Jesus, many of whom claim is God incarnate. So here's the Messiah, here's Jesus, and Jesus is washing the feet of the disciples. Jesus is washing the feet of the common person. Jesus is putting himself in the position of a servant. So let's look at this. Let's look at what Jesus did, because I found this fascinating when I thought of this. Let's put what Jesus did within the context of the other religions. So the Hindu religion, which is the feet are at the bottom of society, if you will, with the untouchables below the feet. And here comes Jesus, Messiah, God incarnate, to wash the feet and to, in a way, make clean the path for the untouchables, if you want to look at it that way. Muslims washing their own feet in preparation for communion or intimacy with God. Now think about this. Jesus washing the feet of the disciples, washing the feet of his followers, washing the feet of the common person in preparation, as if to say the door for communion with God, the door for prayer is open. So if we interpret that within the context of Islam. Judaism, this is fascinating to me because Jesus would have had a direct connection to this. So again, if you think about the guest comes to the house and the servant washes the feet. And in this case, Jesus turns this on its head and says, no, what I'm going to show you is that the host ought to be not only washing the feet of the guest, but the host ought to be washing the feet of the servants as well. So again, we see this almost like this complete 180. It's turned right on its head. It's like some sort of an upside down system, that Jesus is talking about. And so you have all of this rich symbolism behind this one scene of Fred Rogers washing the feet of Officer Clemmens, a black police officer, which I think has a lot of applicability right now in our country. This scene is very valid. It's very sobering. It's very like we need to pay attention to this, even though this occurred, I think we said in the 1960s, I think. I forget the date, maybe probably a little bit later for this episode. But anyway, this idea of washing feet is really quite fascinating. Now, here's where I go to next with this. So Fred drives off the black. I keep saying drives off. Fred dries off the black feet with his favorite towel, channeling his Jesus, washing feet, washing feet. And here's where I close off the song. No goats, all sheep. This is how it should be. No, all sheep, washing feet, washing feet. And here's what I was thinking in closing out this song. I was thinking to myself, what is it that makes Christianity interesting? What is it that makes Christianity unique? I mean, I already explained kind of the foot washing symbolism and how Jesus brought an incredible depth from all of the major religions to just this act of foot washing. But then I started thinking to myself, who do we think is, who do some people think is saved and unsaved? What is all of this no goats and all sheep? Some people are goats, some people are sheep. What distinguishes the two? I happen to be a person who I've taken on more of a universalist faith, I guess, more of a mystic faith, where I think God is going to redeem the whole world or whatever he's doing. I get that some people love to do it individually, like, oh, this is what God has done for me personally. Maybe that makes you feel special. It doesn't to me. I don't quite understand that. But anyway, but I started to think, what separates the goats from the sheep? And what was fascinating to me, and I got to hurry because we're kind of going over on time once again, but what fascinates me is that when Jesus talks about separating the sheep from the goat, it's not based on who said some magic prayer when they were children. It's not who asked Jesus into their heart. And, it's not that. That was not Jesus's metric, at least in this particular scene. It wasn't even people who pray and read their Bible. I mean, there are so many people who I know, they say they pray, they say they read the Bible, and that's about all they do. and there's really nothing beyond that. I mean, I can understand if you're praying and then maybe meditating and God draws attention to something you should be doing and you actually go out and do it. That would be completely different. But there are a lot of people that's their metric. It's like, well, I pray and I study the Bible. I go to Bible study and I pray every day. And it's like, that's not the metric either. So what is the metric? What is the thing that is dividing the sheep from the goats in this particular scene? Well, I have it printed right here, so I'm going to just kind of read this out loud. Well, I'll summarize it. But the king is dividing the sheep and the goats, and here's what it is. Okay, so if I was hungry and you gave me something to eat, sheep. If you didn't, goats. If I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink, sheep, goats. This is applicable today, especially in this political season where everybody's talking about securing the borders. I was a stranger and you invited me in, sheep, goats. I mean, think about that one. I needed clothes and you clothed me, sheep, goats. I was sick and you looked after me, sheep, goats. I was in prison and you came to visit me, sheep, goats. Now, I will make the argument, I'll continue to make the argument that I personally believe that if these distinctions are made, I have to believe that God is powerful enough to redeem the whole thing. You know, I don't necessarily believe in heaven and hell. I certainly believe that if things have to play out, it's going to be an all or nothing deal. It doesn't make sense to me that this literally occurs where God says, okay, sheep, you're all going to go to heaven with me, and then goats, you're all going to burn in hell. That just does not make sense to me. But the metrics by which Jesus is measuring this stuff at least indicates something. It indicates that maybe we need to pay more attention. Maybe we need to pay much more attention to what it is we do. How do we pay attention to the feet? How do we pay attention to the untouchables in the Indian caste system? How do we pay attention as hosts, as people of means, to the people who don't have anything? And I think that is a very important metric for us to pay attention to as we continue to kind of unpack this stuff. So let's stop right there. The next episode, I am going to continue talking about my music. I realize it's shameless promotion, but I hope it's challenging and helping people to think about things differently. And it's almost October 25th, which would put us 2 months before Christmas. And the next episode, I would like to visit the Christmas album that I wrote in Christmas of 2023. It would be Christmas of 2023. And Christmas of 2023 and this album really changed the trajectory of my life, and its production really changed certain individuals' perceptions of me in a way that I was able to form a lot of really good relationships with many people. And at the same time, I had to say goodbye to some people who were supposed to be a part of my life. But I think it's more important that I keep doing this type of thing that kind of feeds my spirit. I hope that it's challenging people, but that's where we're going to pick up next time. All right. Namaste, my friends, and I look forward to chatting with you again.